The changing seasons have filled me with power. I have something to give you now, so come see me. This is Legendary Adventures, a Legend of Zelda playthrough podcast. This week we're confronting General Onox, Twinrova, and the Evil King, but not before taking on a hero's challenge. On the beach to the southwest of Horon Village there is a cave. It features carvings around the entrance. In an unlinked game, Link finds his sword inside this cave. In a linked game, we start with the sword, and this cave gets an upgrade. It's the Hero's Cave, an optional mini-dungeon of sorts. It's possible to visit the Hero's Cave prior to this point. I actually first visited it fairly early on in my playthrough, but I determined I would probably need some items that I picked up in later dungeons, so I decided to save it until the end. The Hero's Cave is broken into distinct chunks, with portals to the entrance appearing after each chunk is completed. So it is possible to complete the cave throughout your adventure. Each section generally ends with a reward such as a gacha seed. The first section is built around pushing pots to depress floor switches. We often need to push blocks to open paths to get the pots to where they need to go. And after 3 rooms of pot pushing puzzles, the first portal appears. The second section largely revolves around jumping challenges and uses either Rock's Feather or Rock's Cape. It ends with a challenge of pushing a large pillar across the floor, with several weak points that we have to navigate around. The third segment is primarily built around lighting torches using the slingshot. We have to push blocks to reach our end goal. The penultimate challenge of this segment is a combat challenge in a room that's mostly water. It strangely requires us to leave this room and then return in order to find the final enemy. And in the final room, we use bombs to get to the torches. In the fourth segment, we use the magnetic glove to cross a large void with magnetic discs suspended over it. The magical boomerang is used to activate a series of crystal switches. And we use the magnetic glove to place a steel ball on a switch. The fifth segment brings us back to the pot pushing from the first segment, and it features a combat challenge that we move through in stages by pressing floor switches to make enemies appear. And a magical boomerang challenge at the end is the hardest we've seen in the game. We need to move the boomerang through a narrow passage with a couple of curves in order to hit a crystal switch. The final challenge really tests our knowledge of the game. I needed a walkthrough to help me figure it out. 8 treasure chests appear in a room. We are intended to determine that the room is a rough map of Holodrum. We then need to open the chests in the intended order of the dungeons. We get a level 3 power ring for completing Hero's Cave. It triples Link's attack power, but it also triples the damage he takes while wearing it. Inside Hero's Cave, we can find a Zora who offers us a secret to give to King Zora in Labrynna. Booting up Oracle of Ages and traveling to Labrynna, we can share that secret, and in exchange, we get a sword upgrade. Link gets the Master Sword. King Zora then gives us the secret to give in Holodrum in order to get the same prize. I completely forgot to cash this in, and so I was still using the Noble Sword through the end of the game. I then returned to the Maku tree. He says that by collecting all 8 essences of nature, we've become a true hero who both understands the essences and is a hope for all who live. The Maku tree gives us a giant Maku seed. The tree says that we must first defeat Onox and rescue Din, then we can take on Twinrova. Just then, Onox seems to contact us telepathically. He challenges us to come and face him, saying we will be no match for his powers of darkness. Zelda and Impa appear, and the princess also urges us forward to face Onox. I think we already got it, Zelda, but thanks anyway. Onyx's castle is located in the north to the west of the temple ruins. Previously, if we tried to enter the castle, the screen would swirl and we would be forced back by a dark power. This time, however, Link pulls out the giant Maku seed, and the 8 essences swirl around it. The way forward is cleared, no longer blocked by the powers of darkness. But, back in Horon, trouble is afoot. The witches, Kotake and Kuume, use lightning to scatter the crowd of people around Princess Zelda. They then swoop in and promise to snuff out the hope of the people, lighting the flame of despair. They capture Zelda and are planning to use her as a sacrifice to resurrect Ganon. Unlike Oracle of Ages, Oracle of Seasons does not feature a full dungeon in the lead-up to the fight with Onox. Instead, Onyx's castle is more comparable to the Windfish's egg in Link's Awakening. It's a small area operating on a similar principle to the Lost Woods. If we travel in the wrong direction, we'll be looped back endlessly. It took me a little while to figure out the trick of reaching Onox. We simply need to press forward straight ahead. If we venture to either the right or the left, we will find rooms with fairies and flying tiles, but our progress will be reset. By traveling forward to the north, we face a series of combat challenges. First clearing out a room of Wizrobes, then a room of Dark Nuts, and then facing off against a returning mini-boss, Facade. Like Oracle of Ages before it, Oracle of Seasons keeps repeated bosses to a minimum. I've said before, and I will probably say it again, but repeated bosses are a common element of Zelda games. There hasn't been one in the series yet that hasn't had at least one. Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons have one repeated boss fight each, and two bosses, Vyre and Great Moblin, cross over between the two games and repeat in that way. After Facade falls, we move on to the final fight with Onox. The General of Darkness tells us that we're too late. He informs Link that Zelda is now in the grasp of Twinrova. He says nothing can stop the return of Ganon now. He then promises to destroy Link. Onox is fought in 3 phases. In the first phase, he wields a mace on chain. He also jumps, shaking the castle and causing boulders to rain down from above. We can only damage him with a spin attack. A regular slash just won't do it. After 5 or so hits, Onox changes up the rules of the fight. He begins using Din as a shield. She is trapped in a crystal. If we hit Din, we will take damage. We need to figure out how to get Din away from Onox so that we can hit him. At this point, I saw him add a new whirlwind attack into his rotation as well. I tried just about every weapon item I had and found that none of them were effective. They did not hurt Onox, but would hurt Din. The magnetic gloves had no effect. I turned to a walkthrough for a little help, and it turns out that we need to use the Rod of Seasons to hit Din away. How we were supposed to come to that solution beyond just trying every single item in our inventory, I'm not sure. We knock Din away, land a hit or two, and then repeat the process until Onox falls. The fight isn't quite over yet. I was wearing a heart ring, and so I could refill my health by walking around, so I did so by walking around the outside of the room. When we make a move toward Din, she is magically transported away and the floor collapses. Onox reappears. He says he will show Link his true might and transforms. He becomes a dragon. This, he says, is his true form. He is a dark dragon summoned by Twinrova to help them resurrect Ganon. The fight with Onox plays out in a side-scrolling view. It reminds me of another Capcom game, Mega Man X, and the final fight with Sigma. Onyx's weak spot is his head, but he's so high up in the air we can't reach it. We can, however, jump on the back of his hands and use them as platforms. When he swings his hand down to hit us, we can dodge the attack and jump onto the back of his hand. When he raises his hand up or ducks down, we can jump up and hit his head. We dodge fire attacks and an attack where he sweeps his hand across the arena and attempts to crush us. We get onto his hands and land hits. After several hits, Onox finally falls for good. It's not necessarily a happy ending, though. At least not yet. Onox says that we are too late. All 3 flames are lit. According to Onox, the land will be devoured by the power the Flame of Destruction has granted Twinrova. Onox dies laughing. Din is freed. The seasons are returned to normal. Winter melts away in Horon Village, Spool Swamp, the Graveyard, and Sunken City. It's almost the beginning of a happy ending. But we're not out of the woods yet. 3 flames light the darkness in a den of evil. Kotake and Koume call on Ganon, the Gerudo King, to rise from the darkness. Din urges us to defeat Twinrova. She explains the essences have filled Link's body with mystical power. That power refills Link's hearts and seems to transport him away. We see a vision of Nehru and Din promising to aid us and guide us to Twinrova. Link is transported to Twinrova's lair. There is a portal leading back to the Maku tree. Thank goodness. I returned to Holodrum and I bought a potion from the Witch Syrup in Sunken City. I also visited Vasu Jewelers and put on that level 3 power ring we got from Hero's Cave. Then it was back to Twinrova's lair. This is another area similar to the Windfish's egg in Link's Awakening. We need to find our way to Twinrova. There are exits in 4 directions and 10 statues making a rough X shape in the center of the room. The eyes of the statues swirl around and then look in a variety of directions. The eyes are our hint on where we need to go. But I didn't quite pick up on the right solution. At first, I thought we needed to travel in the direction the most eyes were looking. We get absolutely no audio or visual feedback to suggest that we are going in the correct direction. After a bit, I decided to turn to a walkthrough just to make sure that I was doing things right. And it turns out I was doing the exact opposite of what I needed to be doing. We need to travel in the direction no eyes are looking. We do this 6 times or so in order to reach Twinrova. Again, there's no audio or visual confirmation along the way. I was getting a little worried there at the end, but eventually I made it. As with Ocarina of Time, the fight with Twinrova plays out in 2 parts. In the first part, we fight the 2 witches in their separate forms. They fly around a room and throw elemental attacks at Link. We must hit those attacks back, Dead Man's Volley style, to the witch of the opposite element. After 3 or so hits, the next round begins. Twinrova combines into their singular form, a tall, much younger woman who has the powers of both ice and fire. She switches between forms. In ice form, the floor gets covered in a sheet of ice, and Twinrova sends spiky ice balls sliding around the room while throwing large balls of ice at us. In the fire form, pits of lava appear on the floor, and Twinrova throws flames at us. And in the transition, make sure you're standing in the right spot, otherwise you will fall into the lava as soon as it appears. I hit Twinrova with the sword and seemed to be dealing damage. But the fight stretched on and on, with Twinrova switching back and forth between forms. After about 5 minutes of seemingly making no progress, I again found myself consulting a walkthrough. Turns out the sword doesn't actually hurt them, despite the audio and visual feedback that suggested otherwise to me. Instead, we just hit them, until they enter a damage phase, when both elements can be seen at once. Then we need to hit them, with a mystery seed in order to deal damage. It took 3 hits with the mystery seeds for Twinrova to fall. Zelda has not been sacrificed, Ganon has not risen again, but Twinrova now plan to use themselves as the sacrifice to revive him. The 3 flames turn blue, and lightning strikes the torches. Dark shadows descend on Twinrova. And Ganon emerges. He laughs madly and says only, "Destroy all. Kill all." Ganon hits hard. He can only be hurt by a spin attack. Ganon teleports around the room, slashing at us with his trident, shooting energy balls, and occasionally making the room transform into a strange, swirling psychedelic realm. Our controls become reversed during this attack. I used my potion to get a health refill during this fight, but I eventually landed enough hits to send Ganon back to the afterlife. We climb a set of stairs to find Zelda laying on an altar. The flames of sorrow, destruction, and despair have been extinguished. Zelda awakens. She explains that the last-minute substitution of a sacrifice resulted in a botched revival of Ganon. He was only a mindless, raging beast. Suddenly, the lair starts to crumble. But not to worry. The Maku Tree uses his magic and transports Link and Zelda back to safety. He helped out just when it was needed. Din, Nehru, and Impa are also waiting at the base of the Maku Tree. They each thank Link. Zelda explains the Triforce mark on his hand designates him as a hero who is destined to help in times of need. She too thanks Link, and in what may be a callback to Zelda 2, gives him a kiss. This is only the second time in the series that Zelda has kissed Link. The kiss makes him a little woozy. The credits roll. We see a variety of happy scenes. Din dances again. Nehru and Ralph visit other lands. Link and Ricky face off in a friendly boxing match. In Hyrule, Zelda stands upon her balcony in a starry night and watches as a shooting star streaks across the sky. The three Triforces fly into the sky and magically become birds. Link leaves Holodrum, setting off on a boat for new adventures. Does this imply that the Oracle games then lead immediately into Link's Awakening? That's up for debate. Thanks for listening to this episode of Legendary Adventures Podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did and you haven't already, please consider subscribing. And a big thanks to everyone who has already subscribed and is following along. You are incredible. Next week we're going to talk about the world of Oracle of Seasons. I am Paul Riley, and I will see you next week.